page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Honorable Michalakis.
Thank you, Chair. Just the spelling of my surname there in the second paragraph. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Michalakis is raising an issue of the spelling of his surname. Page 4, page 5. Oh, okay. We're dealing with corrections. Is there a mover for the adoption of these minutes? Honorable Michalakis, seconded by Honorable Ntlangwini. Thank you. Oh, I thought you were seconding.
No, I wanted to read. I read first through it, Chair, because I see there was a misspelling of my surname. So if they can just correct it as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. The surname of Honorable Ntlangwini and the surname of Honorable Michalakis will be corrected. And Honorable Ntlangwini seconded the adoption of these minutes. Mr. Klaso, do we have matters arising from these minutes of the 27th of May?
The matters, Ma'am, are largely covered in the items on the agenda. If there are any outstanding matters, we will highlight those.
Thank you very much, Mr. Klaso. Now we are on item number 4. We are moving. Item number 4, consideration of proposals for Oversight Committee on the Presidency, Annexure B. Honorable members, we have been sitting with this matter for quite some time, from the 6th Parliament up until now, the 7th Parliament. What we did, honorable members, after the adoption of the report of the rules of the subcommittee, after the adoption in the rules committee of the report of the subcommittee, we then embark on a process. Some parties like the EFF made their submission in the 6th Parliament, and also other parties, we allow them to make their submission with regard to this proposed oversight committee over the presidency. Can I hand over to Mr. Klaso to take us through? There are several submissions that were received and submissions that we made as parties. So those who didn't make any submission, then it's fine, we will carry them. Mr. Klaso?
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. We have circulated our notes, honorable members. I hope you got them. Title Subcommittee on the Review of Assembly Rules, dated 6 November 2020, should be 2025, our apologies, not 2026. Okay, we'll just make sure that you get them. What we're dealing with here is implementation of the decision of this committee, and which was taken on the 31st of October. My colleagues could please help to circulate those notes. Parties were then asked to make submissions, written submissions, to address key issues. Some of the issues that needed to be addressed was whether the Oversight Committee should be established as another portfolio committee or be otherwise provided for in the rules with a distinct orientation, and whether and to what extent oversight would extend to matters beyond the administration of the presidency. And given the unique functions and status of the president, the subcommittee should consider whether guidelines would be required to facilitate meetings with the president, and any such arrangements necessarily apply to liaisons with ministers or other office bearers. We have since received 3 submissions from the ANC, from the DA, and from the economic freedom fighters. The ANC submission highlighted forums that are currently available for holding the president accountable, which is the State of the Nation address, vote 1, and questions to the president. And also the view of the party is that the Oversight Committee should largely focus on the administration of the presidency, and that the president would assign a member of the executive to account to the committee on regular issues. However, that the president or deputy president would nevertheless be required to appear before the committee once a year to respond to policy matters. If I may start with the EFF, of course, the party also supports the principle of establishing the committee, and they note that no activity of the state should be above parliamentary scrutiny. In essence, the party proposes that perhaps we should consider a joint process, that it not just be the NA, but it could be the NA and the NCOP. I'm summarizing, Chair, the parties themselves can elucidate more. So that the composition should be proportional. And the EFF also proposed a composition of either 10 members, if it's the NA only, or 13 members for the committee. The DA also, of course, says that there should be this committee which must maintain oversight over the Department of the Presidency and must call before it the president and or the deputy president to account on government policy matters with exact prior notice to the president or deputy president, as the case may be, as to the policy matters under discussion. Another highlight in the DA's proposal is that the chair of the committee should be from a party other than the party of the president. The DA further made a supplementary submission, which one, of course, supported the committee with the main focus on vote 1, that the DG and the president as accounting officer to account to the committee, and that the president may assign a member of the executive to account to the committee, and the president or deputy president is to appear before the committee once per year. And point number 4, if and by way of a motion passed by the House or within the discretion of the Speaker, a matter of national importance that cannot be sufficiently scrutinized through other parliamentary mechanisms and for which the president and or deputy president is answerable occurs, the Speaker must refer such matter to this committee for oversight. There is an aspect in the initial DA submission, paragraph 255C, point 3, which deals with upon receiving a substantive motion with regards to the conduct or breach of office by the president. If that point is still sustained in the submission, Chair, I would suggest that perhaps this is a matter for the Section 89 committee, unless the DA has since reviewed that aspect of the submission. In essence, Chairperson, the view is that from all the parties that have submitted, that we should proceed and establish this committee, and in essence that the committee must conduct oversight on the presidency, and that the president and or deputy president must appear before the committee just once a year, and that notice be given beforehand when they appear before the committee. Now, we have made certain points. Karen, has the document been circulated?
Was in the packs, but members may not have it, so I'm just getting some.
Okay, it's
copies.
paragraph C, if the members, or this document that I said constituted my notes. It's page 3, and the heading is further considerations. I hope members got it. So here we are then saying that we should consider whether we want to make this a standing committee on the presidency, or it should be we should create this committee for this term, the 7th term, and see how it goes. So that is one point that we are putting to the committee to consider. We are also saying that the matter of a joint committee be considered, bearing in mind the difficulties in terms of getting joint committees together. So it may be that initially the House may want to establish it and then assess whether it needs to be a joint committee. We are then proposing that the committee be the standard composition of portfolio committees. However, if there is a view that you need a bigger committee, which could have more members, we could make the membership perhaps, I think, 16. That's what we have proposed. And then paragraph 4, which is on page 4 of that same document, we are then just emphasizing the point that the functions of the committee be principally limited to oversight over the budget and spending of the presidency in accordance with applicable law, the rules and delegations of functions in the executive, which means that the committee would ordinarily engage a member of the executive and or director general delegated by the president. We are also saying that it may also be prudent for the rules to clearly articulate the nature and extent of any liaison with the head of state. For instance, should the committee be just posing questions generally on matters of policy, that provision may have to be made to providing the president with notice on the subjects to be raised at a particular meeting. In other words, there's a sense of these are the issues that we want to raise with the president, so that there's a degree of preparation for that on the side of the president. We are also proposing that the committee could adopt guidelines regarding the execution of its mandate and the guidelines to provide for the annual program of the committee and the predetermined dates for the president and or deputy president to appear before the committee every year, and the scope of issues to be posed to the president or questions, and perhaps the number of questions that can be posed by each serving member of the committee. Those are some of the guidelines that can be taken into account. Honorable Chairperson, that is in essence our presentation. In summary, the overwhelming view is that this committee must be established, conduct oversight on the presidency, president be able to appear before the committee, and that we consider whether it must just be an ordinary size of committees or it be a larger size in terms of the number of members. Thank you, ma'am. I think let me pause there.
Thank you, Mr. Tasso, for that presentation, and also for indicating the parties that managed to make submissions to enrich the proposals that are being made. So I don't know, honorable members, whether you want us to go back to each submission or we take the presentation as presented here. Honorable Michalakis.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, I have made an additional presentation on the basis of what I have seen in the other two presentations, both the EFF one and the ANC one, because I think there is general consensus that this committee needs to exist and it needs to be robust. Chairperson, and therefore I came up with the final presentation in the hope that we can find some consensus. And I just want to point out one or two things behind the reasoning. So I do think that in all three submissions, there is consensus that it should exist. The proportionality, I do think, can be sorted out at the Rules Committee at the beginning of every Parliament, as with every other committee. So I think it's dangerous to include it in the rules specifically, but I do agree with the EFF that it should be proportional, obviously. The reasoning why I agreed with or initially submitted the once a year is obviously you do not want the head of state to be in Parliament once a week, but it is important that you have him and his deputy here both, that you don't have a case where only the deputy appears. That's why once a year the president and the deputy president needs to appear, but once a year should be fine for the coming year's government policy to be scrutinized. It's not like a minister that has to appear every single week, because then the head of state will never have a chance to actually govern. I do agree with the comment made by Mr. Castle that my initial proposal 255C3 should actually resort under the Section 89 committee. Therefore, my updated submission did not include that because it's already catered for in the National Assembly rules. I do think that it should be a standing committee of the National Assembly, primarily because the president is the function of the National Assembly constitutionally is to hold the government to account, whereas the NCOP has a vastly different role. Coming from the NCOP, I can attest to that, but also from our experience, joint committees and also bigger committees are very difficult to get together, and it's going to completely render this committee ineffective if we have this massive committee like the Joint Standing Committee on Defence and the joint, all the joint committees, quite frankly, the Constitutional Review one. The bigger the committee and the more the joint committees are very difficult to get together. So I would advocate very much for a committee, a smaller committee of about 10 members or 14, 15 members as we have in the National Assembly, but a portfolio committee. Just with regards to the jurisdiction, I think that my submission sets it out quite clearly. I do think that the proposed jurisdiction that Mr. Castle presented is a bit narrow, and I do think that the presentation or the jurisdiction or the scope of the committee, both in the ANC's initial presentation, but also with my additions, actually makes it specific for the purpose of what it is intended. And I would like to suggest that we actually consider the jurisdiction of this committee as set out in my submission. And then finally, I do agree that it is important to give an indication to the President and the Deputy President what issues it is that the committee is going to discuss, because you would like them to be as prepared as possible. And government is quite vast, so I mean, there are many things that you can ask. What I do not agree with is to give them that indication at the beginning of the year, because from time to time, there might be policy issues that come up that might not be foreseen at the beginning of the year that you would like to scrutinize. And then the committee should not be bound by something that it submitted 8 months ago. But I do think, and I don't think it's necessary to give the exact questions to the president, but I do think it's necessary to say to him, when you come to the committee, it's in the interest of the committee to say, prepare on the following policy issues that we are going to scrutinize, because ultimately what's going to happen is you don't want a situation where the president says, I can't come and answer because I was not prepared on A, B, C, and D. It's in the interest of both Parliament and the President for him to have an indication of what it is that the committee will be scrutinizing. For all these reasons, Chairperson, I do think that the submission that I have made does incorporate the submissions from the EFF and the ANC and the DA as well, having reconsidered our own one as well. And I would like to propose that that alternative submission of ours be considered by the committee. Thank you.
Honorable Ntlangwini.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much to Mr. Paso for the presentation and all of the submissions. I think, as Mr. Mikalaka has said, all of us have agreed on the Oversight Committee on the President. But I think, Chair, once per year, it's not gonna be enough for the President to account to Parliament, at least once per quarter, if one needs to look at it, because the President anyway comes to Parliament for question sessions and all of that. So at least once a quarter can at least cut in terms of them reporting to Parliament and letting that oversight body have some sort of teeth, then it to be once per year. Because why I'm saying so, in February, the President put out his SONA, the State of the Nation. And then the minister comes in with the budget. In that SONA, perhaps of the President, he will take all of these committees and forums that we have already listed in our proposal that is under his office, right? Then the Minister of Finance will come with his financial proposals and all of that. Then it's again the mid-term budget yet again. So in all of that, we would have lost what I've spent if the President will only come and account once to Parliament on whether it being policy issues or what, some sort of oversight do we want to hold within on overall of the President's over the Presidency, because it's not only on policy issues that we want that Oversight Committee to look into. And I think as a general establishment here in Parliament, in any other committee, Honorable Michalakas, when ministers even come and report to committees, they would get a draft invitation in terms of the committee wants to meet you on this set date, Minister, can you come prepare with this following out items? So that is already within the set rules of Parliament in terms of their work. But I really feel that once a year, it's a little bit cutting it too lenient to the head of state in terms of what we want to achieve with the oversight in terms of the Presidency. So really we will think that at least once per quarter, and then we can see how it goes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Ghana, then Honorable Sweya. So I'll come to Mr. Khoso. Honorable Ghana.
Thanks very much, Chair. So I think the areas of agreements in terms of the establishment of that, it's done. I also agree that it needs to be a National Assembly committee rather than a joint committee. I think the one joint committee that works, it's ethics. It does work. It's a joint committee, it works, and it does have more than the normal 11 members that a committee in the National Assembly has. So I think it's not the numbers that makes the committee work. It's the people that are assigned there. And given, given that a lot more political parties will want to involve themselves in, you can at least expand a bit and not just go with 11, as you quoted that rule that I also called you on with the ad hoc committees, that you might want to participate, but then you say, no, this is a specific committee, then you won't get to participate. So the only way you can kind of get around that is not to have 11 members, it's to then expand it. So I'll speak first on the numbers to say, let's expand it a bit, maybe go to 15, and then we calculate the numbers in that regard. Then the other point insofar as the timing of when the president is notified. Obviously, it will be programmed in the same way that the questions to the president are programmed. But what will be discussed on that day might very well be decided 14 days before, in the same way that the president will not know the questions that will be asked then, because you want the issues that are discussed in that meeting to be as current as possible. You know, like it's in the same way that we ask questions and then we give, I think it's a 2 weeks, then the president will have the questions and then will respond. So the time, you know, we can look at the time of notice. That's what I'm talking about, because in terms of the issues to be discussed can follow the same insofar as the questions. Because I'll presume the amount of preparation is more or less the same. Then when it comes to how often should the president come, so sometimes these matters, even though we discuss them separately, they are connected. So let's say we accept, and I'm jumping, but you'll understand why I'm jumping there. We accept the proposal on adding an additional question. Now there are 5 questions in the question and answer sessions like we had today. Then that adds a layer in terms of holding the president accountable. What I'm looking at, it's a situation where the presentation, let's call it the presentation of vote 1. Not when it's debated, when it's presented. You know, like we go through. So the Minister of Finance tables the budget, then the committees go and then scrutinize the budget, and then it comes to a debate. So if you look at the process that leads up to the debate, then in that the tabling of the budget, not the debating of the budget, the tabling of the budget in the committee where it gets processed and so forth, the president can appear there. And then once that's done, then the additional one will come in. So in essence, what you are dealing with in the number of times that the president comes is that there will be 4 times that the president will come to answer questions. The president will come and deliver the State of the Nation, the response thereof, then going to the committee to present the budget and the APP and so forth in the committee, then come to account for the budget itself and also all the policy areas that it needs to account to. So in essence, what you then happens is that now the time that the president comes as will increase. So it's not just the one that's stipulated here, and that's where I'm trying to synthesize or trying to say, all right, we can add the aspect wherein we scrutinize the budget in the committee. Then it's desirable that the president is there and the deputy president are there. So that even when it's debated, at least it's something that will have happened there. Then you have an additional one that then comes. Because in essence, so if you think of the first quarter of the year, the number of times that the bulk of the time that the president will be in parliament will be the first quarter of the year. Because of the State of the Nation, the debate thereof, the appearing before the committee to table the budget and so forth, then to come and debate the budget in the House in the first quarter. And then you can kind of start spacing out for the rest of the year. That will be my kind of proposal. Effectively, what my proposal does is that it adds another date. So it's not just one day in the committee. or one session, it's another date that then specifically look at the budget, and then with the additional, if we accept the interpellations, then it then broadens the scope of oversight insofar as the president. But the other thing that sometimes happens is that because he's the president, all questions goes to him. That if there was some kind of a discipline from the members ourselves in terms of the kind of questions that then goes to the president, in a way, it will increase oversight and this accountability to Parliament. I submit. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ghana. Honorable Sweya.
Thank you, English Food, and good evening to everybody. I'm also in agreement in relation to the committee being formed. I think because the DP and the president also go to the NCOP to answer questions, it should be a joint standing committee. That's one. I'm also in support of the appearance or once a year. What we could work on is the modalities in case we feel that it might not be enough. It could be a question of saying once a year, the whole day. That's my submission. Spoke about the joint committee. The other one that I agree with is you can't at the beginning of the year say you are going to provide them with questions and you find that the committee has given a set date, which is in September. So we need to come up with, I might not necessarily say 14 days to send the questions, but it could be something along towards the date, maybe a month, to be able to give them time to prepare themselves thoroughly if, for example, they're going to be appearing for the whole day. Now, if you look at like what happened today with daily, what happens when the president and the deputy president come to answer questions is that there is room and space for all the political parties to be able to participate in questioning the president and the deputy president. So for example, if today one political party, let's say UAT, did not find an expression in a space, there is a formula somehow that in the next session that will sit, they will find an expression. So I don't necessarily have a formula that I can provide, but I think the numbers as suggested, somehow they close out other smaller parties. That's what I'm saying. I don't have a formula, but I want to pursue that. We look into a formula that can be able to include as much possible smaller parties than what we have. And technically that will mean that if the suggestion is 13 and so, we could expand it so that we give the constituencies of other political parties that opportunity to be able to ask questions to the president and the deputy president. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I come back to you, honorable members, let me just say this and allow Mr. Klaso to come in so that he can clarify some of the issues. Mr. Klaso? Yes, please.
No, thank you, ma'am. I think Honorable Ghana has touched on some of the points I wanted to indicate. Currently, the president appears before the House, the NA, at least 6 times annually at SONA, at budget vote, and the 4-question opportunities. And so the once a year would obviously be the 7th time that he appears. Of course, Honorable Ghana has made a suggestion about appearing before the committee. Our thinking was that it would be the ministers in the presidency who would appear to explain and defend the budget in the committee. That was our view, but of course, our view remains our view on the matter. The issue of whether it should be a joint committee, we'll leave it to the honorable members to decide that. And we agree on the issue of the notice. I mean, it would be unreasonable to expect the types of questions to be asked in September to be given, the notice to be given in March or even May or even in June already. But the point we're trying to make is that there must be advance notice of the areas that will be covered. And again, not the specific questions, but the aspects that will be covered in the question session. The Honorable Chief Whip of the DA, we would need clarity at some point on the scope issue. You said that you would want that we should not limit the scope. We didn't think we were limiting it, but we would like just clarity in terms of what you say the scope should be. There's vote 1, there's oversight on the presidency, and beyond that, what other areas? Yes. Honorable Chair, what we will do once there is agreement here, we will then develop rules for the subcommittee to consider before it goes to the NA Rules Committee. So as soon as you want to meet, we'll be ready with the rule. We've started developing the rules, but we want to get the principles agreed to so that we could finalize the rules. On the composition, we are working on various permutations, not various, but at least 16 members or 14 members in addition to the 11 that we have proposed. So if, for instance, you had 16 members, ANC would have 6, DA 3, MK 2, EFF 1, IFP 1, other parties 3. 14 members, ANC 5, DA 3, MK 2, EFF 1, IFP 1, other parties 2. We may never have a composition that accommodates everyone. So we'll just have to decide how best we deal with the issue of the size of the committee. Thank you.
Mr. Tasso, okay. Before I come to you, Perrin, and members, I see you, honorable members, I see you. Mr. Tasso, the numbers that you are giving now of the composition of the committee, are they proportionally or it's just numbers that you are giving us?
No. To the extent possible, they are proportional. Yes, they are proportional. For instance, if we had 11 members, I think the ANC would have 4. But with 16, the ANC has 6. With 14, the ANC has 5. So the numbers are proportional, as it were, at the moment.
Perrin?
Thank you, Chair. I maybe just wanted to highlight just 1 or 2 points. I think that there must be in the rules, when we develop the rules, there must be clear outline of what the president, deputy president will account for vis-a-vis what the minister in the presidency or the DG in the presidency is expected to account for. So the rules must distinguish between those 2 elements. In terms of the notice, I think, and again, either in the rules or the guidelines, which we're suggesting, that the date when the president or the deputy president come, or dates, whether it's more than once a year, should be decided obviously long beforehand, because the president's very busy. So maybe in the beginning of the year, you identify dates within the budget cycle when the president makes sense for the president to come. But the notice of which questions are going to be put or which subjects are going to be put to the president would come maybe 2 weeks before or something of that kind. So even though you predetermine the dates, the actual subjects that he might need to answer on would only be, would be 2 weeks or however many days before those meetings. So I'm just trying to distinguish between notice of when the president actually appears in terms of the dates. But that would be different to the notice in terms of what are the actual subjects that he would have to answer on. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Before I come to you, honorable members, I just want to remind you of one thing, that the program of the NA and the NCOP is not the same. It differs. Then when it comes to the issue that Honorable Ghana raised of the joint committees, that there is the ethics committee and it's working well. Then we have the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence is working well, but there are some difficulties when the NCOP is not around, because we know that sometimes they take Parliament to the people. So I would like to advise that maybe we should focus on the NA committee, because they have their own mechanism as to hold the president accountable on that other house. As for a start, if we can have it that way. Honorable Michalakis to clarify the issues that Mr. Paso raised, then followed by Ntlangwini Matafa. Oh, okay, it's Honorable Nihas, then, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with you just on that last point, the NCOP and the NA. The programs are different. I also find that two chairs of chairs with equal status, a chairperson and a speaker with equal status, it's very difficult to coordinate the two houses, and it does have an effect on the efficiency of some of the committees. Mr. Castle asked the question with regards to the proposed scope from my side of this committee, and I think it's quite well contained in my last submission. And it sets it out in 4 points, which builds on the proposal made by the ANC, which was firstly establishing a portfolio committee on the presidency with a main focus on oversight of vote 1. Secondly, the DG in the presidency as the accounting officer with a minister in the presidency assigned to come and account on the budget of that specific department. Thirdly, the president and the deputy president to appear once a year each to respond on issues limited to policy matters of national and international importance. So the one appearance a year is with regards to policy matters. That's over and above other appearances that might be necessary. It's just to account on policy. And that could be an entire day spending with them going into the policy matters as the honourable member has indicated, but that it is, policy doesn't change overnight. So it can be once in a very long while that they come and account with regards to policy. And then finally, if by way of a motion passed by the House or within the discretion of the Speaker, a matter of national importance that cannot sufficiently be scrutinized through other parliamentary mechanisms, in other words, other parliamentary mechanisms don't go far enough, like oral questions or so, and we want more information, then the president and or deputy president is answerable. Occurs if something like that occurs, the speaker may refer such a matter to the committee for oversight. So it does cover the department, the DG, to come and account with regards to the budget. It does account for answers from the president and the deputy president on policy matters, but it also accounts for where Parliament feels that other parliamentary mechanisms did not go far enough to bring a motion or to approach the speaker to ask that the president and the deputy president come and account. So I do think that as a scope is reasonable, taking into account the duties of the president, but also taking into account the recommendations made previously for such a committee for Parliament and Parliament's constitutional role. So that would be the scope, in my opinion. The last thing that I just want to say, Chairperson, is that if it has to come back to the subcommittee in the form of actual rules for us to consider, that it should be done speedily, because the decision to establish the committee was taken, I think we said 31st of October. It's a year later, and it does become slightly embarrassing. Not that it's any of our fault necessarily, but it does become a problem if it takes Parliament a year or 2 years to establish a committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nias.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. A couple of issues. The first one is on the issue of whether it should be a joint National Assembly and NCOP committee, or whether just the National Assembly. On the one hand, I am almost convinced on the necessity of a joint committee, because the President obviously reports to both the NA and the NCOP. But on the other hand, Chair, I am aware of the difficulties of scheduling, and I'm also aware of some of the other issues that have been raised in terms of the function of committees that are joint standing committees. So my proposal would be that for now we go for a National Assembly committee. That's the first point, Chair. The second point is that I think we should approach the manner in which we deal with the topics that the President and the Deputy President will respond to in a very similar way to the way that we deal with all portfolio committees and joint standing committees. In the sense that, yes, we will have an agenda. That agenda will determine the broad categories of what we want to raise with the President and the Deputy President. So obviously we're not going to go into the process of providing more detailed questions. I don't think that will help with the integrity of the committee to do that. And the public perception will be that this is a staged meeting, which we should try to avoid. Chair, then I do want to again revisit the issue of the number of meetings that we should have with the President and the Deputy President. I'm fully aware of the challenges of the program of the President and the Deputy President. But I'm also aware that there need to be accountability over the whole period of the year. So for us just to cluster a meeting or perhaps 2 meetings on the basis of the budget, etc., and on the basis of the State of the Nation address, I don't think serves the purpose of what this committee was originally intended for. So from the side of the economic freedom fighters, we propose still that we should aim for quarterly meetings with the President and the Deputy President. And we do so in the understanding that, yes, there are times that the President is going to appear in terms of presidential question time and all of that. But the nature of what presidential question times and the nature of what this committee's work is and the granular detail with which this committee can hone in on issues when we engage with the President is critical. So for the sake of accountability, and taking into consideration the difference in the nature of the work of the committee and the other appearances of the President. From the perspective of the economic freedom fighters, we would still strongly propose that we consider the possibility of quarterly meetings. And yes, of course, the rest of the issues I've raised. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Matafa.
Thank you, Chair. No, mine was just to rise on the issue of the composition and committees. How I understood Honorable Ghana was that he's not necessarily advocating for a joint committee. And maybe to seek clarity from Tate Kaso in terms of the numbers that he was proposing, that would they be for the National Assembly Committee? Because how I understood Mr. Ghana here is to say, whilst the Ethics Joint Committee might be working, indeed there are challenges in other committees. I mean, I also serve in another one, the Constitutional Review Committee. It's difficult to bring us all together under one roof and be able to execute the work that is necessary. And I think there is a point that Honorable Mekhlakis succinctly went to town about it in terms of explaining the difficulties that are there. And I think that it also speaks to the frequency of the times that the economic freedom fighters are proposing. Whilst I understand the point of departure, but I think maybe it would be overloading the work on the side of the president firstly. But secondly, I think we have established mechanisms whereby the president does appear before Parliament to answer questions, the budget is tabled, and presenting of the SONA. So it's not necessarily, in my view, clustering, and respectfully would want to propose that the once per year that is proposed in the initial phases should be the one that we resolve on. And lastly, we resolve on the issue of a National Assembly Portfolio Committee. And then as time goes on, the NCOP can decide if whether there's a mechanism that they want to participate as far as holding the president accountable is concerned. I'm not sure, Chair, if whether you'll allow me just to seek clarity on the recommendations already that were proposed. On point number 2, it reads as follows: the Director General in the Presidency, as accounting officer, to account to the committee. Whilst I understand where it might be coming from, but do we think that it's necessary that we put it in the rules? Because my view is that we are holding the presidency accountable. So if we are so prescriptive and the DG is not available, what then? Because I think the second part of the sentence, which says the president may assign a member of the executive to account to the committee, is sufficient. It can be the member of the executive or any other assigned individual. That's my view, and it's a proposal that I'm putting for the committee to consider. Instead of being prescriptive that the DG as an accounting officer, which she is, but I'm just saying, are we not limiting ourselves of not having the meeting sitting because the DG or the president is not there? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, honorable members. Honorable Ghana.
Yeah, quick one, Chair. Just to restate that the committee needs to be an NA committee. My referencing of the ethics committee was to advocate for an expanded in terms of the number of members who serve in that committee. So I was making that because those joint committees have got more members than the ordinary portfolio committee. So it needs to be an NA committee. It needs to have more than the current, so the standard, because this one is not a standard committee that we are talking about here. It needs to have more members. We, given the numbers that you have said, Wabkaso, 11, 14, 16, representing the other parties, I lean towards 16, but if 16 fails, I can fall on 14. 11 is too far for us. I can fall on 14. I can land there at 14. When you go below 14, you are digging. We are deep. So I will then appeal to the members here that from our side as smaller parties, we would like 16. It allows a bit of a space for us, a bit more people to serve. But if 16 is not agreed to, let's settle on 14. Let's not go below 14, just so that at least there's a broader participation on this. And just to restate that, I think that there are ways that we can deal with these matters. And if there's an urgent matter, that to the point that Honorable Mkhalakis is raising, an urgent matter or a matter that the Speaker believes that it needs to go to the committee and the president might have to come and clarify some matters, you have created a space for that to happen. But I think the numbers as I had proposed, I think it's fine. If you want to add an additional meeting, might very well be the tabling of the annual report of the vote. So the tabling of the annual report of vote 1, that you might then want to interact with the president, both the tabling and the tabling, but those ones needs to be better scheduled. But I will think that the 8, so the 6 plus 2, because that's what I proposed. It's the current 6, and then I add 2. So that 2 can either be the presentation of the budget or the presentation of the annual report. So it's 6 plus 2. That's our submission. Thanks very much. And by the way, I support the interpellations. I'll argue a different point on that.
Thanks, Honorable Ghana. Honorable Ntlangwini, I want us to summarize after you. Then we can move on to the next item. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think I've heard the other proposals of other members, and I think what we want to establish here, it shouldn't be looked into that we are establishing it for Mr. Ramaphosa. This is an establishment of a portfolio for the presidency. So any other president after his presidency will be held accountable in this committee. And what do we seek to achieve? And because let alone the questions and answer sessions that at times you are disturbing me, Gan. Let alone the question and answer session that at times become a mockery of an issue, that you will have at times a president or people that are forever continuously shocked of questions, let alone that. But we ought to have a president that at least come to parliament. We don't say come physically. Parliament have advanced and technology have advanced to a hybrid thing. So when we say come to parliament, because I think this thing of saying the president must come and appear, everyone is thinking, no, the president must fly from all over the world. He must come now to parliament. But in actual fact, he can appear from wherever he is. That is how technology have advanced these days, that we can have those sessions on a hybrid session. So it doesn't mean that we are saying when the president have to appear every quarterly, once per quarter, for a question in front of the portfolio committee, because once per year, it's a bit cutting it too thin in terms of an oversight body or in terms of the presidency. At least to be lenient, at least once per quarter. And we hear all of the other platforms that the president are accounting to. But this proposal wouldn't have been there if those questions and answer sessions were effective. The reason, precisely why we are establishing this oversight committee, it's because of those question and answer sessions that we are having, in the sauna and all of that. We don't have enough time with the president to scrutinize whether it's policy positions or whether it's budget positions and all of that. So once per quarter at least will be efficient for him to come and account to Parliament. And we must never feel that he's doing Parliament a favor. No, he needs to account to Parliament because he's accountable to Parliament. He's not doing us a favor by appearing to Parliament. We respect him as the head of state, but it must never be a situation whereby we tiptoe around a president. No, Chair, no. Let us not do that. The meeting have been continuing very well. The meeting have been continuing very well. Don't do that.
Honorable member, I was
Please.
not doing anything. I was just noting what you are saying.
So,
I didn't respond to you. So let's proceed.
so when we are even in terms of question sessions that, and it's a pity Ghana have left, because many a times them as smaller parties, in terms of question sessions, they don't get time to even raise a question to the president. So I don't know what is this myopic view of, no, we have questions session and then SONA and all of that, because they don't even have time at times in terms of that, the smaller parties, to even have the time and platform to raise questions to the president. So I really would plead that at least once per quarter, and then even if we are putting in there, so even that once per year, the president can decide, no, I'm not coming, I'm sending my DG. That is how lenient we are saying we are. Then what is this, the purpose of this oversight committee? It means most then it's not, he doesn't need to come and account to parliament. He will just send someone or some of the ministers. So at least once per quarter. Thank you, Honorable Michelakas.
Thank you very much, Honorable Makubela.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. Well, mine is few clarity from Mr. Kwaso, emanating from the point made by Honorable Ghana on the issue of the formula of the members. Can you maybe just recap with us if it's permissible that it's either we use the formula, but you also take into cognizance the issue of smaller parties? Because if you are using a formula, the formula is determined by the number of votes that each party received. So maybe just recap on us on how that aspect will be taken care of. And then just taking from one point raised by my honorable colleague here, Honorable Matafa, in support of the omission of saying the DG in the presidency must account. I think it's sufficient if the president is coming to account, is the executive authority. He brings in whoever he feels sufficiently must come in account. But if you then prescribe that you want the DG to come here, you are now causing two centers within one space, which is called the presidency. I think it's sufficient that the president comes. The president will bring. Ultimately, the DG can't come to the committee without the president. So bring the presidency to the. We are making these rules in this committee for future. We're not making it for specifically. I am in agreement with you, Honorable Ntlangwini, but let's just leave out some of wordings that may become problematic, perhaps in the future. And then, lastly, on the issue that says the committee must sit once a quarter, I don't want to support that. I want to say we are in support of a committee meeting annually. There is sufficient mechanism in Parliament for the president. The president is forever here. Each and every week within the program of Parliament, there is the executive coming in to do functions of Parliament. And then if you want to now say the president must come to a committee per quarter, you are now putting the president in a situation that says they must be in Parliament throughout the year. And what about the time that they need to be out there implementing the very same policies and programs that we are passing here in Parliament. That's my submission. I'm in support of once per annum, and let's just leave this insinuation of thinking that the president or the presidency does not want to account to Parliament. Because putting the president in a situation that says each and every quarter there must be in Parliament to account in a committee, it's simply saying the presidency does not want to be accountable to Parliament. That's my submission.
Honorable Michalakis.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, with the greatest of respect, if we have a committee on the presidency that sits once a year, we would be failing as the subcommittee on the mandate that was given by the Rules Committee that a committee needs to exist that holds the presidency to account. Firstly, you also can't have the DG in the presidency being the only DG who does not come and account to Parliament. That is why that is included not only in my submission, but actually in, I believe, the ANC submission itself. So the members are technically going against their own submission. But I am more and more inclined to say that if that is the attitude, to say that the president must account once every year in a committee, that I would actually support more and more the view that we should make it more often rather than less often. I would still stand firm in my opinion that once a year on policy matters would be sufficient. But frequent accountability is a fundamental part of this committee. It can't be that this committee sits once every year and then forgets about the president for the rest of the year. That cannot be. Because ultimately, yes, we need to take into account the nature of the president's work, but we have work to do as well. And it's fundamental that Parliament can be seen to be holding every single member of the executive, especially the head of the executive, to account. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to close this matter, honorable members, and also to remind ourselves that in this committee, we don't take decisions. We deliberate. If we don't agree, we don't agree. It will be captured as such. But what I want to say in this meeting is that the once per annum, my understanding is that is for the president or the deputy president on policy issues that we are agreeing upon. And also to say that we will indicate what is it that we want the president to come and account. We are in agreement on that one. Then the other one is that the president can delegate any member of the executive to come and account to the committee. We are not saying the president, the committee must sit once per year. That is not what we are saying. The DG is the accounting officer in the presidency. So the advice that we would want to get from the legal team of Parliament or the table staff is whether that can be captured in the rules. That is what we would like advice from. The issue of putting in writing the DG to appear before the committee to account. So I don't know where this once per annum of the committee to sit come from. So we are in agreement, honorable members. That is what we are agreeing upon. We haven't moved from anything. My understanding is once per annum is for the president and deputy to appear on policy matters. And we cannot expect this committee to be a committee that will sit every day. It can't be. There are many mechanisms where the president and the deputy president account. So we cannot expect the president to come. It doesn't matter who the president is. The rules that we are dealing with are not made for a specific person. The rules must be the rules that can stand the test of time. So let's not lose focus, honorable members. We want accountability, the Zondo Commission, the State Capture Commission. recommended that Parliament should have a committee to oversee the presidency. So this is what we are dealing with. Are we in agreement, honorable members? Thank you very much. So, Mr. Klaso, if maybe you can respond to what Honorable Makubela was asking of the composition of, and also while you are responding on that one, Mr. Klaso, I can't get the rule now sitting here, but I know that in any committee, any member of parliament can go and sit. But it's only when it comes to voting that you cannot vote, except for two committees where you cannot just go and patch in, the Ethics Committee and the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence. Those two committees, no one can enter unless you go through those processes. But other committees, I don't know, I forgot the rule. You are allowed to go and know. And when we talk of proportional representation, that one deals mainly with what you have, what you got from the votes. Mr. Klaso?
Ma'am, on the issue of the composition, I will ask my colleague Tanya Lyons to speak to how we did the composition there.
Good evening, honorable members. In terms of working out the composition of committees, because of the size of the committee, 11, 14, or 16, it would be proportional to the extent that the party that has the greatest party strength will have the most representation. But it will not be strictly proportional in terms of the percentages, because then the smaller parties would not get a seat at all because of the voting percentages, because we have some parties that say got 0.29% of the vote or 0.41. So if you look at those percentages and you're looking at 16 members, they wouldn't get a seat. So what happens then is that the larger parties would then cede perhaps a seat or one or two seats, and that's where you would get your representation for your other parties, say 3 seats, which would then be distributed amongst them. So it is a slight seeding, but it's normally say if it is 13.5 or 3.5, then we would take it to 3 instead of pushing it to 4, if that helps.
Are we good? On the composition? Okay.
On the
Mr.
issue, it's Rule 185 that you are referring to. A member of the assembly who is not a member of the committee or subcommittee may be present at a meeting of the committee or subcommittee. And the member mentioned above who is present at the meeting of the committee may speak on a matter before the committee or subcommittee, subject to any reasonable restrictions the chairperson may impose, but may not vote. So one of the questions that you need to, as honorable members, decide is whether you want this rule applicable in that committee or you want to have an exception, because you can do that in the rules. But you'll have to consider that point as well, honorable chairperson. We may proceed to the next subject. But as soon as the chair is, you are ready to meet, you will be ready with the rules. So for us, by Monday next week, the rules will be done.
Honorable members, will you be available, let's say Tuesday evening, so that we can finalize this thing? To sit as a subcommittee and look into the draft rules that the table staff will bring to us. Then if we agree, we will move on. If maybe it's not captured the way we want it or the way we have suggested, it's fine, we'll make those corrections. But remember, this is the subcommittee, we don't take decisions. So we process. If we don't agree, both views will be taken to the Rules Committee for decisions. Are we in agreement, honorable members? Are you going to be available, even if it's online, honorable members? Are we in agreement that we can meet on Tuesday? It doesn't matter what time, what the time will be. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Let's step on to the next item, interpellations. Mr. Klasu.
Interpellations, Madam Chairperson. I just want to get my document. There was a decision of the.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Klasu.
Perhaps I missed it, but so there are other issues on the agenda beforehand. So I don't know if you want to prioritize interpellations. It's really.
Mr. Klasu.
I wanted to suggest, because at least the ANC and the DA, in their submission on the presidency, they also commented on interpellations. So we can basically just conclude that matter, if you agree, and then we should not be long. Chair,
Let's deal with the interpellations, honorable members. I'm sorry, my mind is on our submission that we couple the presidency and the interpellations in one page. So let's go to interpellations. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We won't burden you with what we have in the document is quite cumbersome. But the principle was agreed that there ought to be interpellations. We have come up with a proposal which is a hybrid of what is known as interpellations and the current system. And maybe I should indicate why we coming with that is because if we do have interpellations in the purest form as it is currently, it means that you are now going to have 2 hours for questions and an hour for interpellations. But the format that we are proposing, but it's up to the committee to consider, is a format that keeps your question system with an element of interpellations. We've given different options, but the option that the ANC supported, and I see the DA says it supports the ANC option, is an option that says you would have the original question called by the presiding officer, minister responds for 4 minutes, the questioner has an opportunity to do a follow-up question, then again minister answers, then another member, then the minister answers, then another member. In other words, you're going to have a 5th supplementary question, which will be by the questioner. So the questioner will have 2 bites, the first bite and then the last bite before the minister replies. So that is one option that we seem to think at least the DA and the ANC have expressed a view on, if we understood your submissions correctly. Otherwise, if we want to have interpellations and the questions as we have them, you would then have 1 hour for interpellations. Either you take 20 minutes per interpellation, so you have 3 interpellations per question session, 1 hour from 3 to 4, and then from 4 to 6, your questions, ordinary questions. Or interpellation takes 15 minutes, like we had before. So before we did away with interpellations, an interpellation took 15 minutes. So we had 4 interpellations, but the Western Cape, they have interpellations, it takes 20 minutes per interpellation. Still, it is an hour. So we could have that, and then you have your question session as you have it. Or you could combine it like we have just said now, that you have the questioner having the first bite, 2 minutes, and then the questioner again at the end, having another bite, and then the minister responding. So, Chair, maybe you should clarify us on that, whether you want us to go for the hybrid or you want us to interpellations and the question session as we have it. But we have understood you to say, let's go for the hybrid.
Honorable members, there we are on the issue of interpellations. Honorable Michalakis.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, if the hybrid has very much, and I understand it does, the same effect as interpellations, in as it gives the original questioner the right of response as well, I would very much be in favor of the hybrid model, as I've indicated. It also allows us to, for the whole 3 hours, have questions. I would possibly, and I don't want to open a can of worms, say that obviously we're going to have fewer questions we go through. As a consequence, I'd rather be in favor of maybe extending that. Maybe I'll regret lengthening my Wednesday evenings in Parliament, but so let's not go there yet. But I do think that if a hybrid model has the same effect as interpellations to a large extent, I would be very much in favor of that. With a caveat that we can always, at a later point, revisit the need maybe for it. But for now, the hybrid model, I think, is a fairly good way to go forward. Thank you.
Honorable Matafa.
Thank you very much, Chair. No, I think our submission is aligned to that of the Democratic Alliance. So I'm speaking, if you allow me, Chair, on the request of Honorable Ghana. He is also aligned with both our submissions. However, he's asking the committee or the subcommittee to consider what Honorable Michalakis is afraid of doing, extending the time to 30 minutes so that they are able to have more questions, obviously with the risk that it will extend the time that we are going to be working until into the evening. But there is his only request, because his view is that time will throw some of them outside the bus. So if the time is extended, they will be able to come in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nihas.
Thank you, Chair. From the side of the EFF, we would also support the hybrid proposal. We would also support that we extend the time, because I think it gives us an opportunity to deal with more issues in a better and more granular manner. And we like the hybrid proposal, especially also at the end, that the person who asked the original question can come and, in a sense, sweep up with everything that had been answered by the minister. And we just need to deal with those issues in a way that they are dealt with properly. But overall, we agree with a hybrid approach. Thank you, Chair.
With regard to the extension of time, honorable members, if I may, you know most that sometimes some ministers will not be available to respond to questions on that particular day. Then when we say, let's extend the time from 3 hours to 3.5 hours, what will happen when maybe 2 ministers are not here to respond to questions and their questions had to stand over? So meaning, how many hours are we going to sit? I'm just bringing this to your attention, honorable members. I wouldn't want us to take a decision now around this issue. Honorable Michalakis.
Thank you, Chair. In most instances that I can recall, it was only one minister, with the exception of 1 or 2 cases where there were 2 ministers. So it would extend the question session from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. And I'm saying this tongue in cheek, but maybe then hopefully Parliament would be more decisive with members who say that, with ministers who say that they wanted to stand over, because it's going to move us over to 8 o'clock if they do. So hopefully we will be more decisive with them. But the point is that I want to make that at the maximum, I think it will move our question from question session ending at 7 o'clock instead of 6:15. It's not going to kill anyone. Thank you.
You know, what I want to correct is that in most cases, it doesn't happen that the minister will be sitting in her office or in his or her office and not wanting to come and respond to questions. It's situation beyond their control that would make them sometimes not be available to respond to questions. So, honorable members, I would like us, before we can take any decision. We agree on the interpellations and the hybrid part of it. Do we have to take decisions now that we are extending the time to 3.5, or we want to go and consult our caucuses just for that particular time, the time extension, or we take a decision now? What is your take, honorable members? Okay. Honorable Michalakis is saying, let's discuss it on Tuesday. We agree. Thank you very much. So let's move on now to...
Now go to the composition of the Petitions and Undertakings Committee.
Yes.
Which is item number 5. Here, ma'am, this committee and the Rules Committee agreed that there must be a committee on Petitions and Executive Undertakings, but we did not agree on the composition. We are proposing that it be the same as the composition of portfolio committees, which is 11 members, and we get this committee going the soonest. That's what we are proposing.
Honorable members, the proposal by the NA table is that the petitions, the composition of the Committee on Petitions and Executive Undertaking be the same as any other portfolio committee. Are we in agreement, honorable members? Oh, Eletu, siyabonga. Thank you. Then the next item, Mr. Klaso.
I'm now going to hand over to my colleague, Karen Handik, to take the meeting through item 6.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good evening again, members. I suspect this may not be quite as quick as the previous item, but I'll try and be succinct. So members will recall that a short time ago, the Speaker requested the Rules Committee to inquire into the need for procedures or guidelines to regulate how committees and members conduct oversight visits to government facilities. And those are both announced visits, the way committees traditionally do that, as well as unannounced visits. So I do want to say, maybe as a point of departure, that members have been active in their communities and frequently engage government departments and facilities to assess service delivery for many years, ever since the beginning of the democratic parliament. The concerns that have arisen, which led the Speaker to ask the committee for guidance, is especially, or not entirely, but often in relation to facilities that may be or are usually otherwise considered to be restricted. So, for example, defense facilities or intelligence services, or those kind of departments. So those are the questions that have arisen where members have tried to get, say, access to a particular facility, and there's concern from, in some cases, from the executive, or perhaps there's uncertainty about how to deal with that. So that really gave rise to this idea of guidelines. Members may also recall that there was a discussion, the subcommittee did have a discussion on the need for regulations, although it didn't take any decisions. But it was based on these discussions that the Secretariat has prepared and circulated possible guidelines. And I think if we can put them up on the screen, the document is Draft Guidelines, Oversight Visits by Committees and Members of the National Assembly. Yeah, thanks. So in terms of the guidelines, I first want to say that guidelines are, in terms of the rules, they are enforceable as they relate to members. So just because they're called guidelines doesn't necessarily mean that they wouldn't be enforceable as such. I also want to note, and you'll see this is in the paragraph or section A of the guidelines, that from a legal perspective, the current statutory framework locates the powers and the works of members within the various parliamentary forums. So you'll see, for example, members are active in the House, members participate in committees. There aren't any explicit, and I say explicit because one can read into the law in other ways, but there aren't any explicit provisions concerning how members carry out their work in communities. The only policy that governs that, in fact, is the Code of Ethics. When members go to communities outside of Parliament, they must abide by certain standards of conduct. But how they work in their communities, how they engage with constituencies, or how they're active with departments, there currently are no statutory provisions about that. So that's why the purpose of the guidelines, or the guidelines themselves, are premised on the need for cooperative government. So in other words,
Sorry, Perrin,
sorry, yeah.
we are on this document. Is the return oversight visits by committees and members of the National Assembly. Yes.
Okay. So the guidelines themselves are premised on the need for cooperative government, which of course is, as I mentioned, the idea of cooperative government is of course written into the Constitution itself. So the idea is that parliamentarians and the executive must work together. They're actually compelled to work together in the common pursuit of accountability, transparency, and responsiveness. So it's on that, the guidelines were developed on that constitutional basis. In other words, it requires a measure of cooperation, and the idea is that the guidelines create parameters about how that cooperation can take place. The definitions in Part B, I'm not going to go through. I may come back to one or two of them. Part C, so the document deals with, as I mentioned, ordinary oversight visits, which one might call announced oversight visits, which is what committees currently do when they plan an oversight visit. They apply for permission within Parliament. They'll be given a budget. They interact with the relevant facility, and then they go there. The Part D of the document deals with unannounced oversight visits. Now, in both cases, this applies both to committees and to individual members. So if I go to Part C, which is ordinary oversight visits, and again, these have been, as I mentioned, undertaken, announced oversight visits have been undertaken by both committees and members in the past without real very many challenges. But if I can just read, it says that a committee may, and this is the first part, a committee may, subject to the law, the rules and these guidelines, and any policies determined by the Speaker or the presiding officer designated by the Speaker, undertake an oversight visit to a government facility which falls within its portfolio. So this is in the case of a committee. In the case of a member may, subject to the law, the rules and the guidelines, and any policies by the Speaker, undertake an oversight visit to a government facility, provided that the member has been so mandated by a committee, or the facility is located in and relates to the interests of their community. So this is what we call announced oversight visits. Before undertaking a visit to a government facility, the committee or the member must provide reasonable notice to the relevant executive authority, such notice to include the identities of the persons or persons of the visit, the expected duration, as well as, so these are announced oversight visits. In the case of unannounced oversight visits, which is Part D of the document, the guidelines distill two options, and these apply again to both committees and members. The first option is that so again, in the case of both members and committees, they must seek the sanction of Parliament or the permission of Parliament to conduct an unannounced oversight visit. So this may seem very onerous. In other words, if you're a member and you're in a particular community and you want to visit the school up the road, the idea that you need to apply to Parliament to do that may seem very onerous, but the benefit of that is that it would bestow on that member an institutional mandate or authority. So it would give them an extra status, if you like, if that's the right word. It should in fact be noted that even when it comes to committees undertaking oversight visits, even unannounced oversight visits, there's already a process within Parliament for them to do that. So I think they must apply to the Speaker's office for those kind of activities. So that the first option is the idea of seeking permission to do that, obviously within certain criteria. The second option, and this applies more to committees, more to individual members, is that they can conduct unannounced visits to government facilities without prior notice, provided that such facilities are located in and related to the interests of the community in which the member is regularly active. So the intent here is to locate the authority of members to visit government facilities within the context of their constituency work. So if you come from Cape Town, I'm just making this as an example, the rules actually, the guidelines actually define community to mean the municipality in which a member has a constituency office. So the idea there is that the members the idea is to invest this authority within the context of members' constituency work. So that's at the moment, that's the idea. Of course, it's for the committee to provide guidance in that respect as well. The guidelines also say that if should a committee or a member be denied access to a government facility, they must report the matter to the speaker forthwith with the details necessary for the speaker to take any appropriate action. So if you adopt the guidelines and a member goes to a particular community or, school for argument's sake, and then they're denied access, then it would be for the speaker to intervene appropriately. Section D of the guidelines, these are more what we call general provisions. In fact, they would, I don't think these particularly would be very controversial. Oversight visits must not be adversarial and must be conducted with the decorum expected of all members of Parliament. I think that's the case already. A committee or a member must not, when visiting a government facility, disrupt services, demand information from an office bearer or official that may not be immediately available, or solicit information that is of personal or confidential nature. That's not to say that a member or a committee can't follow up on such issues, but not when they appear or on an unannounced basis. A committee or a member may not visit a government facility or part of a facility that involves a security or physical risk, unless prior arrangements have been made, and all protocols observed. So if it's a construction site, for example, then that kind of provision would apply. All members must, when undertaking a visit to a government facility, and again, this is announced and unannounced, show their parliamentary permits and identification to the person responsible for access to the facility where access is being requested. All members must, when visiting a government facility, adhere to the standards of conduct, including dress, etc., which is provided for in the Conventions of the Assembly and the Code of Ethical Conduct. That's already, in fact, applicable. No member may bring other persons to a government facility except a person to assist in the event a member has a disability, and assistants must observe all protocols. So if you're in a wheelchair, for example, and you want to conduct an unannounced visit, I think it's only correct that someone can assist you, but that person must be clearly identified when they arrive. When the subcommittee discussed this issue previously, it was felt that one needed the inputs of the executive, especially when it comes to the types of access that members would have to certain types of facilities. So Section F of the document tries to facilitate that kind of relationship. It says members of the executive and heads of institutions must take all reasonable actions to assist committees and members in the performance of their constitutional duties. And then the leader of government business must supply Parliament with a list of government facilities to which access by a committee or member is deemed restricted and the reasons for such restrictions. So there, I'll just make by way of an example, if you have defense headquarters, I'm not saying this would necessarily be the case, but the executive may say, look, in the case of a facility of this kind, advance notice is required. In the case of a school, for example, we would argue that a member should not be able to walk into a classroom while the parents are teaching. So the idea there is that the executive would supply Parliament, supply the Rules Committee with its position in respect of the kinds of facilities where members could access without notice, and those maybe where notice would be obligatory. So I understand there's some complex issues here, some complex sort of legal issues, which we've tried to unpack. But I'm sure there will be views. Mr. Casso, I don't know if you want to add anything. Thanks.
No, thank you so much, ma'am. With your permission, just to say, honorable members, Our oversight model, I think it's page 37, deals with individual member oversight. One of the paragraphs in the model speaks of, it says, it is recommended that in the interest of ensuring greater communication on issues arising from members' individual oversight work, ministries develop guidelines for members' interaction and engagement with ministers on issues of public concern. So the oversight model in 2009 envisaged that there will be a need for guidelines when members conduct what we refer to as individual member oversight. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, honorable members. There is the presentation, Honorable Michalakis.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, the Oriani Ambrosini case said that members or the NA rules that require members to seek permission to introduce legislation, private members' legislation, is unconstitutional. What would mean that the NA rules that require members to seek permission to do oversight would be any different from that? It's a fundamental function of members of parliament. And I think on the same basis as that, it would be unconstitutional for any member to seek permission from the speaker or anyone else to fulfill our fundamental constitutional duties. And I suspect that this will be challenged in the Constitutional Court and Parliament would lose that case. And I might very well be the one challenging that. What if the speaker says no? What do you do then? What happens if the speaker says no and I go in any case? It can't be constitutional in anyone's world that members of parliament need to seek permission from the speaker or anyone else, a committee or anyone else, to fulfill their constitutional mandate based on that actual court case that exists. Other than that, if we look at the definition of communities, because in C2B it says the facility must be located and relates to the interest of the community. Community is defined as the municipality where your constituency office is. Many constituencies actually consist of more than one municipality if it's a smaller party. But if I'm on the education portfolio, does it mean that I can only visit the schools within my own constituency and I can't go anywhere across the country to actually go and visit schools that relate to my portfolio? That's the second problem that I have with this. The third problem that I have with it is under Section E, General Provisions 6, members may not bring other persons to a government facility except a person to assist in the event of the member has a disability. But we have support staff that often have to come with us and that often assist in our oversight visits. It's also quite dangerous to sometimes go into some places for oversight all on your own. So we do take support staff with, and we do take researchers and so forth with that enable us to do our work better. I don't understand what the objection is with having support staff attending oversight with us. And finally, my last problem is with members of the executive F2, that the leader of government business must supply Parliament with a list of government facilities to which access by a committee or members is deemed restricted and the reason for such restrictions. But there's no indication of the leader of government business then has full discretion as long as he provides a reason, but there's nothing defining what kind of reason, what is a reasonable reason, within what does it need to fall. And it does worry me that I don't want to give the leader of government business that kind of discretion. But my main concern overall, I can still live with one or two of the things. I do not agree with the fact that oversight needs to happen in the interest or only in your constituency or your municipality. And I absolutely believe that the whole Section D of this document is unconstitutional, and I strongly suspect that it will be challenged. Thank you.
Thanks, Honorable Michalakis. Honorable Nihas.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I want to talk from experience. The whole intention of making a distinction between oversight visits that are planned and unannounced oversight visits is a very practical one. And that is if one goes and announce in advance that you get window dressing. And I can give you many examples of that in the portfolio committees on defense and correctional services where I serve. Chair, and that principle links up with the illegality that the Honorable Michalakis is already referring to. It undermines the whole purpose of an oversight visit that we say is unannounced by looking for the Speaker or someone appointed by the Speaker to give permission. Simply by the fact that I'm here as a Member of Parliament and I've laid down an oath as a Member of Parliament, I have the authority to carry out oversight visits that are unannounced. So I would very, very strongly oppose any idea of accepting that we must first ask for permission from the Speaker or a designated person by the Speaker to do an unannounced oversight visit. It will fundamentally undermine the purpose of oversight visits. Chair, and I actually think if there's going to be a competition between myself and the Honorable Michalakis, who's first going to get to the court, I may nip him to the post. Because I will certainly take such a ruling to court. Now let me take us to this issue of it must be within the defined constituency of a member. It's absolute nonsense. The constituency of a member is not just where you live and where you work in a constituency. I'm in the Portfolio Committee on Defense and Military Veterans. By definition, the work of that committee is national. I deal with the presence of military bases and military veterans throughout the country. And that is not a geographical constituency, it is a national constituency. And therefore, I must be able to visit any facility and engage with the various officers of the Department of Military Veterans without any definition of geography. So let us get rid of this idea that it is geographically defined, because that is not logical in terms of the work that a member of Parliament has to do. And then lastly, Chair, similarly to what the Honorable Michalakis said, I will be very, very reluctant to give the power to the leader of government business to determine what is this list of particular government offices or facilities where the oversight visits cannot take place or should take place under certain strict rules. If we are going to have certain rules, it will have to be dealt with in terms of an agreement, and the portfolio committees that are part of that process will have to be engaged in the final understanding of what that means. But in short, as we sit here as members of Parliament without any particular definition that says the Speaker or a designated person must determine whether we can go on an unannounced oversight visit, and also what those various facilities can and should be that we visit, we would find as the economic freedom fighters unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Nehas. Honorable Matafa.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, let me agree with what Honorable Nehas is saying, that an announced visit gives an opportunity to get the real situation of what is really happening. But I think the problem, and I think maybe the proponents of unannounced visit must assist us with that challenge, is how then do you incorporate what they find there into the work of Parliament or the work of committees? Let me give you a practical example. One of our committees, during an oversight week, we come with a program of action, we do oversight at a particular province. Some members in our committee says, no, we're not joining you, we're doing our own, unannounced. So we come with a committee report, they come with their own individual reports. Are they expecting us to incorporate those findings that were unannounced into the committee report? That's the first question. The second question would be, what do these unannounced visiting members expect those organs of state to view them as, and how should they welcome them? Because it might also speak to interrupting their normal day-to-day operations. And maybe the issue of speaking with the speaker might assist in saying, this visit, as much as this individual is unannounced, is sanctioned by the body that I am representing, not necessarily representing, but where I'm representing my constituents. And those for me, Chair, are the only challenges that we have, because our view is that when that report comes to our committee, we are going to reject it because it doesn't speak to the parameters as far as that particular portfolio committee has identified as challenges that we want to see what their real challenges are in those particular organs of state. So I just wanted to raise those difficulties. Maybe the proponents of that approach will assist, but we have done it before, Honorable Niehaus, when I was still in local government. You are correct. When we say we're coming, we warn them in advance. They paint, they cut the grass, they do everything, and everybody's prim and proper. But when you just walk in, then you get to see the real thing. But there are, unfortunately, negativities in terms of just rocking up, in terms of their daily operations. Thank you very much, Chair.
Let me start with Perrin, and then you'll come, Mr. Klason.
Thank you, members. Now, we knew that there would be discussions and some questions around this. So that's why, for example, if you look at section D, there's options. And the one option is when it comes to, for example, an individual member, that they get the sanction of the speaker. But option 2 there is that they don't need the sanction of the speaker, but then it tries to incorporate this element of the community or constituency. So, and I understand members are opposed to that idea. The difficulty, as we understand, as I understand it, is that the rights of members outside of Parliament, in other words, operating outside of the rules, is not specifically or explicitly determined in law. So you can argue, and this is why it's complicated, is you can argue that because members are public representatives, and that's in the Constitution, they then have, by virtue of that power, by that mandate, they have the authority then to visit government facilities. And that's always been, that's the understanding that currently exists, that it's on that basis that they can do that. But that, the modalities of that are not in the rules at the moment. There's no rules, there's no law that specifies exactly what the extent of a member's individual authority is outside of, when I say Parliament, I'm talking about the structures of Parliament. So that is purely from a legal point of view, the issue that we were trying to understand. I don't know if I'm being clear when I explain it. I know the legal advisor's here that she may want to add. So it was on that basis that we were trying to navigate that situation. It might in fact be, finally, that the optimum way of empowering members to do, for example, unannounced visits, is in fact by way of statute, by way of law, rather than something in the rules. So that's why we were attempting to unpack how that would work. Thanks.
Mr. Klason?
No, thank you so much. I think Perrin is basically saying members will not be covered by privilege when they conduct unannounced visits. So I think that point will have to be, we'll just have to make. I wanted to ask members, we like this interaction. We are also trying to get our heads around this as well. So we appreciate the inputs we're getting. If you can go to the document, paragraph E, I wanted to check with the honorable members what the parts that they find objectionable on paragraph E, Of course, we may not talk about Web 1. Would 2, for instance, and we don't need to conclude this thing today, would paragraph 2 be an issue? A committee or member must not, when visiting a government facility, disrupt services, demand information from an office bearer official that may not be immediately available, or solicit information that is of a personal or confidential nature. Then paragraph 3, a committee or a member may not visit a government facility or part of a facility that involves a security or physical risk unless prior arrangements have been made with the relevant executive authority and all protocols are observed. 4, which I think is important, all members must, when undertaking a visit to a government facility, show their parliamentary permit and identification so they are known that they are members of parliament. And also F1, go to F1. We thought F1 was important. Members of the executive and heads of must take all reasonable actions to assist committees and members in the performance of their constitutional duties. So I'm basically saying that we could still salvage some of the provisions in this document. We don't need to conclude it today, Chair, but we're saying that somehow you may need to have some form of guideline. I hear the issue about the permission. I think you are making a point there, but you need some guidelines somehow. Thank you.
Thanks, Piran and Mr. Kweso. Honorable Ntlangwini, then you'll follow Honorable Mokhalakis.
Thank you, Chair. I want to propose, Chair, maybe perhaps that we acknowledge the submission of Mr. Kaso. We take it back, maybe perhaps just to scrutinize, because there's many points that we don't agree with that is in this proposal. And maybe we club it together with that meeting of Tuesday. To come back with it and maybe have our submission. Because as Mr. Michalakas have said, and we agree fully, the fact that we have to go and ask the Speaker for permission as members of Parliament for oversight and all of that. So we wouldn't agree to such. And many of our members was severely affected by refusal to many of even doing an oversight at a hospital. You will struggle to get to even do oversight there. And we understand why we are having these guidelines and why we are doing it, but I would propose that we maybe perhaps put it together on Tuesday's meeting for us to also effectively consult with our political parties in terms of a way forward. Because as it stands now, it's very problematic and we might join that court case. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Michalakis.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, just to answer Mr. Castle from my point of view, at least, I think sections E and F are quite important on condition that you remove paragraph 6 under E and paragraph 2 under F. And that is pretty much all we need, is section E and F with the removal of E6 and F2. That sums up more or less, in my opinion, the valuable bits of it. And then I would be more than happy to support it if it consists of these two paragraphs with those two removed. I'm happy also to make submissions by Tuesday. I just have one concern, and that is that can we please then prioritize the Committee on the Presidency so that if we don't get through the business, that the most important one of those items gets finalized first. Thank you, Chair.
So I also wanted to say that on the DA submission, there is a paragraph that we think might help on page 3. Any member or committee may, in accordance with the code of conduct contained in the schedule to the joint rules and subject to national legislation, I like that separate national legislation and code of conduct oversight visits at the premises. So it will also deal with the issue of restricted access issues, the issue of separate national legislation, and the code of conduct as well, so that members would conduct themselves in terms of the rules and what is expected of them as members in those facilities. Thanks.
I want us to move from this item. Honorable Swear, your hand is up? No. Okay. Honorable Nias?
Yes, Chair. I think while I like the proposal that was made just now, and we need to look into it, we have to be very careful also about general provisions, subparagraph 3. And we need to have a more proper definition of what we mean by involve a security or a physical risk. Because otherwise, if it is wide open, it is going to become a problem, and it becomes then a dispute between the member going on oversight visit and whoever now arbitrarily wants to decide that there's a security risk. So perhaps the proposal that we had earlier, that it is defined properly by law, may help us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable members. My summary on this one is that let's go and do some consultations with our caucuses. We don't have to come back on Tuesday on this one. Let's prioritize the Oversight Committee on the Presidency for Tuesday and also the interpellations. Remember, on Tuesday is not a free day, honorable members, as I have stated earlier that we'll be attending other meetings. So this meeting, we're still going to decide at what time are we going to have it, and it will be online. Let's deal with those 2 items, I think, for Tuesday. Then this one, let's go and consult further so that when we come to the subcommittee, we don't delay or start afresh with the discussions with regard to this one. Thank you very much, honorable members, for your contribution to this. Where are we, Mr. Klaso? We are on update on the review of rules.
Yeah, I'll ask Perrin to take us through that one.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so there's in fact 3, if you like, matters below the line, to use parliamentary terms, 3 matters pending. The first is that...
Perrin, can you please show the members which document are you referring to?
Yes. So I just want to go, so if you look at item 8 on the rule, on the agenda, it says the update and review of rules concerning order and debate in parliamentary language. So I'll start with that, but I just wanted to highlight that there are in fact 3 items that are pending, and that we can maybe just table, if you like, in the committee. So that's the first item. And there, I just want to say that by way of an update, members will recall that that the Speaker wrote to the subcommittee to express some concerns. This was earlier in the year, about some disorderly conduct, and especially in some cases of unparliamentary references in the rules, in the House, and whether there was a need to look at the rules for parliamentary language. So the Secretariat has since conducted a preliminary assessment of the rules and the practices, and is preparing a document or documentation for this purpose. So the work on that matter is ongoing. So that's an update in respect of what's on the agenda today. Members would have received 2 other letters that came from the Speaker. So we only received them today, which is obviously there hasn't been enough time to deal with them in detail. The first is, I don't know if you can show it on the screen. It's got to do with the review of the 24-hour time period stated in Rule 7312. Which relates to the physical removal of members from committees. And there, I think, I don't know, Mr. Councillor, if you want to explain that. So there's that document. And then the last letter we received is to do with the review of Joint Rule 177, which we'll also just mention. So I think the intent is just to table these letters and then decide how to take it forward. Thanks.
Shall we propose that we don't discuss the matters today? The first one relates to the removal of members from committees of Parliament. The rule says that the circumstances when a member is removed physically must be reported to the subcommittee on removal of members within 24 hours. And the person must be removed by the Sergeant at Arms. There are technical difficulties with both the time, the 24 hours, and the issue of the Sergeant at Arms. So we just need to refine the rules so that they accommodate committees. And the other one relates to the composition of the steering committee of the multi-party women's caucus. There's a proposal that the membership of that steering committee be increased. It's a matter for the Joint Rules Committee, but we thought we should just introduce it here for your information. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much for those two referrals from the Speaker. Honorable members, as Mr. Klaso have indicated, we are not going to deal with these matters today. So the one that requires the Joint Rules Committee will be dealt with by the Joint Subcommittee Rules, which is the NA Subcommittee and the NCOP Subcommittee. So it's just to review and look into the steering committee of the multi-party women's caucus. We know most that in the past we used to have how many parties, 13, 14? Now we have 18 parties and the steering committee is still the same. So it's something that is not that technical. So we might have a meeting of the joint subcommittee on rules online. We will indicate to members as to when we are going to have that. So with those few words, honorable members, let's consult our parties with regard to the issues that we agreed upon. But that one of the oversight, committee oversight and or individual oversight, that one, let's take our time so that when we come back here, we come back with a decision. So what we are looking for on Tuesday is to conclude on the two matters, interpellations, the extension of time, and also that issue we requested Mr. Kwaso on the Oversight Committee on the Presidency. Yeah, that you must look into it, and also the drafting of those of that rule so that we can go through it as members. If you manage to finalize over the weekend, just send it to us so that we can have a look when we go to that meeting. Then it will be a smooth sailing. Thank you very much, honorable members, for your attendance and also your inputs. And to our NA table and parliamentary officials, thank you so much for your support. The meeting stands adjourned. And our political staff members, thank you so much. The meeting stands adjourned.